My name is Darwin German, and I want to give you a little bit of history about how I got to where I am. That in and of itself sounds a little bit arrogant. It's not like I have arrived or I'm something special. I'm an ordinary guy. I've been able to do a whole lot of real estate deals, approaching $1 billion in total transactions over my lifetime. And I actually started writing this in a book. So a lot of this is fresh in my memory as far as telling you the story. Just so that we have it on record, I'm writing a book called Full Disclosure, where I'm going through, the name of the book is Full Disclosure, How an Ordinary Guy Bought $1 billion in Real Estate. Now, I could not have done any of that without my father. I get chills actually thinking about him. He actually died at 57 years old in 2004, which was way too young. Cancer got him. And I don't know if that was because of Agent Orange in Vietnam or the fact that he was an auto mechanic and inhaling asbestos. That I do not know. But bottom line, he passed away in 2004 after the culmination of his work, and we sold an entire portfolio. But I'll get to all that as I tell this story. I was born and raised in Southern California in a place called West Covina, and that's 20 miles east of LA. And my dad, grandfather, and great-grandfather were all auto mechanics. And until I was about 12 or 13 years old, I always thought that was funny. My grandfather's name was Otto, and I was thinking A-U-T-O, but it's O-T-T-O. Just, dumb ignorance of a child. And but his name was Otto. And all my life growing up, my dad and grandfather had owned an automotive repair business on Del Mar Avenue in California. He would work 16-hour days, and he would be up at about 4 a.m., go off to work all day long, a lot of times not be back until 8 or 9 o'clock at night. Because of that, a few things happened. One is my mom never knew when my dad would be home, so she finally said, forget it, she's not cooking. And so I grew up on fast food, which is why I'm actually struggling on weight as well. But he would work 18-hour days, but he would still have time for the kids. There's myself, my younger brother who's 3 years younger, and my younger sister who's 7 years younger. And we grew up, we had an idyllic childhood. My mom and dad, I will go back a little bit farther. My mom and dad met. My mom was 16 years old, I think, and they got married when my mom was 17. She dropped out of school, married my dad, and my dad went off to Vietnam. He got drafted into Vietnam. And my grandfather was still operating the automotive repair shop. He came back from Vietnam and went to work doing at the shop, A&R Garage in California. He was working his butt off, but he always had time for the kids. He was always the coach of Little League or soccer or basketball. He was always at every game. He did all that. So his motto was work hard and play hard. And that is something that he instilled into me. For example, right now, I work 24 hours a day, but I play 24 hours a day. So I'm always on, but I also have time to go ahead and relax and enjoy life. It's been a huge benefit. But getting back to growing up, my parents bought their house in 1973. It was $53,000. They had no idea how they were going to afford that. My mom didn't work, and my dad worked his butt off. I was born in 1970, my brother in 73, and my sister in 78. And like I said, we had an idyllic childhood. Absolutely great. We lived in that house until my mom passed away. She still had that house. So we had a very good, stable family environment, family home, etc. I grew up and my parents said, you're either going to go to church on Sunday or you are going to go to a private Christian school where they have church involved. And I didn't want to give up my weekends, so I opted for the Christian school. So I went to Christ Lutheran School as grade school, K through 8. And then 9 through 12, I went to Western Christian High School. And then after I graduated from high school, I did a couple years at Mount San Antonio College, which is a very large junior college in Southern California, and moved to Texas, and I finished my degree at Northwood University at night school to go ahead and get a degree. I was the first person in my entire family to get a college education. But again, I'm skipping ahead. Okay, I'm going to tell you about my brother. First and foremost, now we've got a great relationship. He actually did a presentation for my partners because in 20 years, he took $20,000 and turned it into a $20 million portfolio. And he did that by doing 20 deals over 20 years. Each one of them a tax-deferred exchange, so he never paid taxes on the gain because he just rolled those over to the next deal. Charlie is brilliant. He's got the Midas touch. Anything he touches turns to gold. But it's not because of his touch. It's because he works hard and he works smart. So my dad instilled that in both of us. Work smarter, not harder. We took two different avenues. He went the route of doing everything himself for himself. And after a while, after I had my education, a lot of experience, that's when I went into syndication, where I bring in partners to go and invest with me. My brother will say, hey, his capital runs out. Once he turns a property, he can go ahead and reinvest. But as far as being able to do tons of deals, his capital runs out. Ours, in theory, does not run out. There's always more capital. So there's two terms, OPM. I do OPM squared. Everybody has heard of OPM, using other people's money. Well, we use other people's money to fix other people's mistakes. And that's where we create value in the apartment industry. People don't operate properties properly. That's hard to say. People don't operate properties properly. I still can't do it. But we go in there and fix the problems, whether it's deferred maintenance, whether it's management problems, whatever it is. But that's how you make money. That's how we create value. We use other people's money to create other people's mistakes, and then we profit from that. And it's a win-win-win scenario. The win-win-win scenario is, first and foremost, our investors make money. That is absolutely great. The residents that live on those properties, we give them a better place to live. And third, the cities love us because we're not fix and flip, slap lipstick on a pig and try and turn it to the next person. We buy for long-term ownership, and we improve the community and work with the cities on making the place better. So it's a win-win-win scenario for everybody involved. And of course, by doing that, we make money off of it. And the only reason we can make money off of it goes back to, again, the way that I've all started all of these stories is my dad. My dad is my hero. He's my mentor. He's my cheerleader. He was everything on the real estate side of things. What's my most significant memory with my dad and my brother and I? And that's a hard question to answer. Siblings, you butt heads, things like that. And I moved out of the house and moved from California to Texas in 1991, the year of my 21st birthday. So I was 20 years old when I moved. My brother at that time was 17. My sister was younger than that. So I was gone at that age. But when I turned 16, I got a car and I was effectively gone. So my family dynamic from the time I was 16 was focused more on myself, my friends, and all that. So I have a ton of regrets in my life. And one of those is my sister, because I left when she was 13, 14 years old. And even before that, all she wanted was attention from me. And the way that she would get in attention, she would be a pest. And that pushed her farther away. But I absolutely love my sister, but I don't get to talk to her very much. Don't get to see her very much because she's still in California. And so I've got a regret on that. That's, like I said, I've got hundreds of them. My brother, when I was 16 and started going out doing stuff, he was 13. So between 16 and 20, when I left, my brother was, 13 to 17. I'm having a hard time with this one. My brother between 13 and 17, I would say the things that I cherished most, let me rephrase. The things that I did not like the most in people that lied, they cheated, or they stole. My brother during that time was rebellious. He was not the type of guy that I wanted to hang out with. Of course, he was younger. He had his own friends, things like that. So we really didn't do a lot together. We did family trips. That was great. That I talked about how hard my dad worked. Every other year, he would take a month off during the summer, and we would get in a motorhome and leave. And so I've got a lot of fond memories of our going cross country in the motorhome and doing that when my brother and sister were little. But when I was 16, I was basically gone. Out of the family dynamic a lot, working with friends, things like that. And the year that I was 17, my junior year in high school, that was my rebellious streak. I did a lot of things that, I don't want to say rebellious. That was my wild year. 17, I was hanging out with all of the people that were just wild and crazy. I'm surprised I didn't die with some of the stupid stuff that I did. And then when I was 18, my senior year, looked at it and said, wait a minute, I don't have enough credits to even graduate high school. So I had to do something separate. So I dropped out of football, which I wasn't good anyway. I never had the eye of the tiger, go out there and kill somebody type of attitude. You need to go out there and really push in football. And so I dropped out in senior year. I did not do football, but I took a DECA class. And I took a DECA class in entrepreneurship. My teacher there, and this class was 2 hours. It was my last period and then spilled over, which is why I couldn't do sports anymore. And it was a year long. So my entire senior year, I had to buckle down and get serious. So mine was 16, got independence. 17, went freaking crazy. 18, had to start buckling down and getting serious so that I graduate. And that entrepreneurship class was great. My teacher said that in personality tests, things like that, that I am a promoter. I had no idea what a promoter is. I always thought a promoter is somebody that puts on concerts or something like that, which I'm sure one of the things a promoter does. And what's ironic is it was just about 10, 12 years ago, I thought about that memory and went, I'm a promoter now. That's what a syndicator is. They call them a syndicator, a promoter. One group calls them lead investors. But a syndicator is also a promoter in selling their investment opportunity. So I came full circle from the time I was 18 until I started doing these syndications and actually became a promoter. That's why I'm the one in front of the camera. I'm the one out promoting what we're doing. I'm the rainmaker on finding the deals. I'm the gatekeeper to making sure those deals work well. And then we have an entire team that supports what we're doing, and they're all brilliant in their own right on making sure all that happens. They also keep me in check. So a long answer regarding my brother. And now my brother got rid of his wild streak and he's brilliant. We get along great now. We're actually doing some deals together. We bought some properties in Lake Tahoe where he's focused his career. And so the relationship is really, really good there now. So growing up, My dad would always buy small houses, small apartment communities, and he'd work on those. It was always sweat equity. He had a great work ethic, would always work his butt off on everything. And he was trying to instill that in me. And one of the rules he gave me was work smarter or work harder. So if grades started declining, he had me out digging ditches, working harder. But still had to have a good work ethic anyway. So every weekend, Saturday and Sunday, he'd have me up at about 6 a.m. And if I happened to have a friend that spent the night, them up at 6 a.m. also, so that we can go work on whatever projects. And so we were doing make-readies on apartments. I was cleaning apartments, doing carpet cleaning, minor repairs. And this was about the time I was 6 years old on up. Now, it wasn't every weekend, obviously. It wasn't that hard. But I would always work on those homes. And so I learned how to do maintenance. And I was pretty good at it. Not great. It's not something I love to do, but I know how to do all that. So we would work on those properties, fix them up, sell them, etc. My grandparents had 2 small apartment communities that they lived in, managed, and worked on, total of 22 units, and that was in Covina, California. And they lived there and managed the property. When my grandfather died, it gave my grandmother a great place. She still lived there. She knew everybody that lived in the apartment community, and she was making great money off the properties. So we've always had real estate in our blood, even though my dad was an auto mechanic. When I was about 12 years old, my dad said, okay, you're going to re-roof a roof. I said, okay. And we had a couple of small buildings in the back that constantly evolved depending on whatever the hobbies were at that time. The earliest I remember, it was a horse barn, even though we didn't have any horses. And then we converted that over into an automotive repair shop. It was about the size of a 3-car garage. Converted that to an automotive repair shop. We work on cars. I was 16, we rebuilt my car, my brother's car, etc. We always worked on cars back there. Friends would come over, we'd be cleaning and working on cars. He had a full shop there. And then that building evolved over time. As that building evolved over time, it was a dance studio for my sister, or a gym for my sister, or another office for my dad when he got older, or a fancy, the last iteration was a very fancy garage to house a couple of collector cars that he had and that he worked on and tinkered on, but it was immaculate. It was just clean and gorgeous, Ferris Bueller's Day Off type of thing where that Ferrari was stored. But getting back to the story, I was about 12 years old and we went out there to roof the building, and he showed me how to do it, flipping the first layer around, getting that nailed down, getting at least 6 nails in that, and the whole deal. Well, I basically re-roofed a building by myself. It was about the size of a 3-car garage, and it was simple, just 2 slopes, nothing fancy, but still, I re-roofed a building. At 12 years old, that was part of the experience. And we would do everything. Built a whole pool deck. We would remodel rooms. We would jackhammer and move plumbing around, and everything you can imagine, I was always working on, and that's what he taught me, is how to work on those properties. At 16, when he changed careers and went into real estate, he had a property management division as part of that company, and I went to work for the property manager. The idea there was, rather, if some tenant had a problem, I could go, and this is mainly on office buildings, I would go out and troubleshoot that first, so we didn't have to call a plumber, an electrician, an HVAC contractor, etc. So if there was a maintenance call, the management company would get that. I worked for the property manager, and she would send me out to the properties to troubleshoot. If I could fix it, I would. And it'd save the properties a lot of money. If I didn't, I knew what was needed and who to call so that we can call a professional contractor to handle it. So that was my start in working in maintenance on a professional level, and I was 16 years old. When he was 30 years old, he wrote a business plan. It's in a 3-ring binder with clear plastic sheet protectors, and he typed it up on a typewriter, which, if you look at the old typewritten things, they're a little bit sketchy. They had to, erase here and there, things like that. And then he did illustrations in colored pencil. So realistically, My dad did this when he was 30 years old, but because technology was so far behind at that time, it looks like something that a third grader does now. But he wrote this business plan where he wanted to take all of the bays, the individual bays of his automotive repair shop, and he wanted to create a business, separate business in each one of them. One is lube and tune, another is a body shop, another one is oil change, another one is brakes, another one's transmission. So he wanted to set those up as individual businesses and sell those individual businesses to individual operators. So the business plan was build those that way, build those businesses, sell those individual businesses, the money that he got from selling those individual businesses to pay off the entire land, and then he has the land free and clear and he has passive income from that real estate. Well, it took him about 8 years to go ahead and accomplish that goal, but he wrote it when he was 30 years old, so about 38. He actually accomplished that goal, sold all the businesses, and had land paid off, so he had cash flow. He immediately went into selling commercial real estate. Even when he died, he still had grease under his fingernails. So he was an immediate success on dealing with these automotive related businesses because he wasn't some stuffed shirt showing up. He could actually relate to these business owners that were owning and operating their own automotive repair businesses, dealerships, etc. So he was an immediate success in doing that. In 1989, I was 19 years old. I'd already graduated high school. I was going to junior college at that time. The people that bought the businesses decided to buy the land. So my dad sold them the land. Now, when you sell real estate, you pay taxes on it, unless you can do a 1031 tax-deferred exchange, which is exactly what my dad wanted to do. He wanted to do an exchange, and he looked all over Southern California for a property to buy to do that exchange. There was nothing good at that time in Southern California, so he started looking all over the country. My dad came across a property in Dallas, so he flew out to look at it. Now, it wasn't exactly what he was looking for, but while he was there, he started looking at other properties, and he found a property called Candlelight Park Apartments, and this is 1989. He loved it. It was a great deal. It was foreclosed on by an insurance company, 128 units in Duncanville, Texas, and he loved it. He was so excited, he did what he calls, jogging in place. He was so excited, he just, had to be moving. So he flew back, got my mom, flew back out to Texas, and 11 days later closed on Candlelight Park Apartments through that exchange. After my dad closed on Candlelight Park Apartments, he hired a good quality accredited management organization, Henry S. Miller Management. About 45 days later, he got his first report that came back, and that report showed $30,000 in uncollected rent. My dad was livid. He was like, what's the heck's going on? So he calls the management company and says, hey, I noticed there's $30,000 in uncollected rent. And their reply was, hey, we noticed that too. What should we do about that? Being livid, he's like, that's job one of a management company is collect the rent. So he said, you're fired, get out. So he fired them immediately and decided that he was going to start his own management company. He hired my aunt, Kay Goman, who was managing an RV park for my grandparents in Russellville, Arkansas. So he hired her to move to Duncanville, Texas, to Dallas, Texas, to manage that property. He also hired a maintenance staff, etc. And true to form, he went and worked on the property. He always believed in sweat equity, so he would fly out and work on the property. Since I was in college and had a flexible schedule, I would come out with him and work on the properties, and so started doing that. When I was 18 years old and going to college, I decided I'd start that as my own business. So I started my own business at 18 years old. I called it college maintenance because that's what I was doing, and I was doing the same service I was doing for the same rate, but now I was keeping all of that money. So it was really, really nice. At 18 years old, I was making great money. I was on call 24 hours, but it was great money. In 1991, we had a family friend that had just taken control of a private foundation. The private foundation was started by a guy who in the 50s borrowed $500 from his father-in-law to build a house. He turned that into a $500 million empire that he ran with him and his secretary, who even in late 80s would just use a 10 key. Well, Ron, the guy that took control of this, was a family friend, and he was talking to my dad and said, where should we invest? My dad said, Dallas, Fort Worth, that's where I went. And he basically said, what do you know? 3 years ago, you were a mechanic. So they went to their big time advisors at Goldman Sachs. Goldman Sachs said the best place to invest is Dallas, Fort Worth. They said, hey, Darwin, my dad's name was Darwin also, I'm the second. They said, hey, Darwin knows what he's talking about. So they said, here's $20 million, go invest it. Oh, you're doing great, here's another $20 million. Oh, great job, here's another $20 million. Great job, here's another. Bottom line is from 1991 to 94, we had $120 million in cash given to us to invest, and we paid cash for apartment buildings, and we bought 5,500 units between 91 and 94. That's what drew me out. I was going to move out here for 6 months to help find properties. We had no idea when the investment capital would end, how far they would go, etc. So I was going to be here for 6 months. So when the family friend got control of that foundation, started investing cash, the very first transaction, Ron, the guy who was running it, was talking to my dad and said, who's going to manage the property? And my dad said, there's a lot of great management companies out there, and we'll hire one of those. And Ron does this. He points his finger. No, you're going to manage them, and you better not fuck up. And so my dad said, okay, fine. So now we have to expand the management company. My dad hired Lila Rochelle as a controller. She was happiest on a 10 key. She'd be reading finance. She'd just be smiling, going through the 10 key, and hired Patsy Dowdy as the property supervisor with the most property management experience. And Kay moved from being the manager at Candlelight Park Apartments to working with the management company. And she did legal and insurance and rehabs and things like that. So that team, one being my aunt, Lila and Patsy, and then I moved out to Texas and I was working with them. Now, I'm the owner's son, perceived silver spoon in my mouth, don't know what I'm doing, young kid. And while Lila was very gracious and worked with me and at least put up the pretense that she liked me, Patsy did not. Patsy and I butted heads. She was not a fan of me whatsoever. And I don't know why, other than being the owner's son and having that stigmatism. But we started Dark Horse Management Group, and that's when we started buying all of the properties. My dad also taught me that you go to every one of these, you've seen these, the seminars that you go to, you learn something, they try and sell you a book and tape. Go to all these seminars. If you learn one thing, it was worth your time. So I always went to all those seminars. I was that geeky kid doing that, going to all the seminars and everything. One time at one of these seminars, I had my cousin with me, and on the way there, I got a maintenance call at one of the buildings. I had to stop at an office building. I had to plunge a toilet, and I had to change some light bulbs. We go to the seminar, and it's a huge room. There's got to be 500 people there. We're about in the middle of the room, right on the edge of the center aisle. And this guy's in his rousing speech on how you make money and how you do this, and you should buy his program and all that. And then he says, what do you want to be doing for the rest of your life? Changing light bulbs and plunging toilets? Okay, that was funny. So myself and my cousin laughed out loud. Everybody else was quiet. He was being serious on that, and shut up. Everybody stops and looks at it. He's, you, and pointing right at me. And my cousin, he was the smarter one of the two and just kind of slid down, hiding himself. And me, I'm sitting there, yes. And he said, do you find that funny? What, get up here. So he calls me up on stage. He said, what is so funny? What is this, humorous? And I said, no, I own a company, and on the way here, I had to change the light bulb and plunge a toilet. And so that was funny. And so realizing, I guess he was going to put me in my place, but realizing what that story was from, he put his arm around me. Oh, this is the next guy. He's going to be on TV with me next year, and give him a whole set of the tapes. and do that. So it was just a funny story that he brought that up of something that I was doing right then, which was an interesting time. In 1988, I got my real estate license, started working with my dad. While I was doing college maintenance and doing that, I was learning real estate, working with my dad, trying to do that. And there was a property in California that I wanted to help lease. Again, because of the crash, everything was down in California also. And this particular retail center, which was where my favorite In-N-Out was located, In-N-Out Burger, which you haven't had, great. And it was a great center. And I then went after that listing. Now, this is a multi-million-dollar listing on a foreclosure by Deutsche Bank. And so I did this huge proposal, got in front of him, made this pitch, and I'm 18 years old. I probably look like I'm 12. And I do this pitch. And of course, my dad's right there, so he's working with me on that whole thing. And bottom line is, they would want some big national company to represent him, but I had this great business plan for him to go ahead and do. In 1991, when I moved out, later on that year, I bought my first house. And it was a loan assumption, non-qualifying loan assumption on my house. I did an equity participation with my dad. He gave me, I think it was $5,000 as a down payment. I make the mortgage payments. Years later, we sell it and split the profit. That's an equity participation. I had bought a lot of my own deals from 1991 all the way until 2007. I moved to Texas in 91. I was working on Candlelight Park Apartments. And there was a property that I wanted really bad. It was called City Center. 3-story vacant office building, shell space, built in 1986 right when the crash happened. Just so you know, little history. 1984 to 1986 was an absolute boom, especially in Texas. The deregulation of savings and loan opened up free money to everybody. People were getting loans. People were building buildings to get loans, not getting loans to build buildings. They were getting loans they were making money on the loan without even building the building. So the savings and loan went crazy. Loaning money where they shouldn't be loaning. A lot of buildings going up that didn't need to be built. But that was fueled by the tax incentives. There was a dollar for dollar tax write-off on any money you lost in real estate. So if you owed $100,000 in income taxes, rather than paying that to the government, you could take that $100,000, invest it in a property, and get a $100,000 deduction and not pay any taxes. So people are saying, why should I give that to the government and it's gone when I can invest it over here and make money on it? Well, that fueled a huge expansion of overbuilding because people were not getting loans to build buildings. They were building buildings to get loans, and that was fueled by a ton of investment capital because of the tax code. In '86, they changed that tax code. Also during that time frame, oil crashed. And Dallas in particular, Texas in particular, was a huge oil state. So between those three things crashing in '86, the market went down and recovery was nowhere in sight. There's what they call a V recession. You know, it drops and then goes right back up. There's a bowl, so it goes down, takes a little bit longer. Well, they were talking about this being a platter. Okay, so it went down and it's staying down, 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 down forever. So that's how the market crashed here, especially in Dallas-Fort Worth. When we moved out in 1989 and when we bought the property in 1989, that's where we bought it, is in that downturn. So we got a great deal on it. And in 1988, 89, 90, I was trying to do real estate. But again, too young, too inexperienced, but I was learning. I was taking courses, learned how to analyze properties, did everything on that side of it. So in 1991, when the foundation started buying properties, I already understood how all that worked. So when I was doing the trips out with my dad in 1989, 1990, I found a property that was a vacant office building, city center, 3 stories, black glass, beautiful building that because the market crashed, they could never lease up or finish. And I had dreams about that building. Part of my drive when I moved out is that building, city center, that 3-story office building, I wanted to represent them and help lease and own and operate and manage that property. 1991, I moved out to help on all that. Well, I decided to start a real estate company. I started with a guy named Monty Anderson. Monty Anderson is a beast of a real estate agent, 300 commercial transactions a year. Most of them leases, a lot of them small leases, but he wanted to be the king of real estate in what they call the best Southwest. That's the southern region of Dallas County, which also has a negative connotation, that whole area, as far as being the southern part of town. So he was going to be a big fish in a small pond. We started Options Real Estate in DeSoto, and we ended up getting the listing to lease and operate and manage that 3-story office building. Every morning, 7 a.m., Monty and I would be on the roof of that building looking out over the whole city of that area and deciding what we can do on the real estate side. In the meantime, I was also working with my dad's company, Darcourt Management Group, and we were finding and analyzing, and my primary role was due diligence. I would go out and I would coordinate the due diligence, interior walks, exteriors, working with the contractors, and all of that whole side of it, doing due diligence on all these properties. I walked 90% of the units that we bought, including properties in Phoenix when it's 125 degrees and I've got to walk 500 individual units. So it was a lot of challenge, and there's a whole lot of great stories in there when you're going into people's apartments for due diligence. But I was doing all that concurrently for a few years, and I was also the boots on the ground. My dad lived in California, the owners of the property lived in California, and they needed boots on the ground, and that was me. And so I was doing special projects, construction, rehab, analysis, etc., everything on the properties that we had under management. But I also found, Monty and I found a 14-unit apartment complex in Oak Cliff, Texas. Now, Oak Cliff, back in the 50s and 60s, was the place to live. It was just south of the Trinity River from downtown Dallas, and a bedroom community, beautiful land, topography, beautiful area of town. And it was the place to live, and that's where all the development went. However, with urban sprawl and people moving farther and farther out, the area declined and declined and declined. A lot of crime, a lot of other problems, and that was the bad area of town. Well, we found this property, 14 units in Oak Cliff, which, by the way, the seller was brilliant. The guy we bought it from. He bought it many years earlier, paid cash, and then he would sell it. He would get 25% down payment. He would sell it and carry the note. Eventually, they might sell it to somebody else, and he'd just keep the note in place. And eventually, because it was such a bad, rough area, drugs, theft, crime, shootings in the area, it was a bad area. You don't want to be there at night. Eventually, he would foreclose on it. He wouldn't even go to the property. Didn't care one lick. He put an ad in the paper that would say 25% down, owner financing, and to call him. So there's 14 units. He had sold and foreclosed on that property probably 15 times, getting 25% down payment each time, making a killing. Brilliant guy, brilliant. I love that model. But we bought this property, $80,000, nothing down. And it's because Monty knew the guy. So we went in there, and I was the one putting up the money. I had two partners, a guy named Butch and Monty. Monty was going to be the property management in that area because I didn't want to go into that area. And Butch was going to be the construction. So Butch gave his bid and his price on how much it was going to be. We bought the property. And the first thing that happened is Butch was going to go in there and start working on fixing up the property. He probably didn't last 6 months. He would go install an air conditioner. The next day he'd come back, it would be stolen and gone. Tools would be stolen. There would be more vandalism and things like that. And Butch eventually said, forget it, I'm out. And so he walked away. What he was doing the job at cost. I'm sure he was planning on making some money because he was the guy out there doing the work. But he bailed, and he was going to have part ownership. When he bailed, we had to hire another contractor. So this is one of the lessons to learn, by the way. Get numerous bids, even if it's a business partner doing the work. And the bids came back 3 times higher than what he had quoted it for. So that was a challenge. The next challenge was, out of the 14 units, 12 units were occupied by drug dealers. There was more traffic there than 7-Eleven. There were trails from the neighboring properties carved into the dirt where people would walk all the time, going up there to buy drugs. Because they had 12 of them occupied by drug dealers. And we said, how are we going to get them out? And I'm like, well, we evict them. Monty said, you know what? That's just going to cause problems with those people. They're going to fight it. There's going to be everything like that. He said, there's a better way of doing it. Let's kill their drug traffic. I said, okay, how do we do that? Well, we went out there every day, stood out in front, and anytime anybody pulled up, said, you here to score? And they said, when they said yes, we said, no, you're not. We're going to call the cops. Get out of here. So we killed the drug traffic so that they would move out. In hindsight, huge, dangerous thing to do. But eventually they moved out. Here's how bad it was. One time I was talking with one of the residents there. Cute little Hispanic girl, long, black, dark hair. And I'm talking to her. And literally, standing outside in the courtyard, literally, no joke, no exaggeration, a cockroach crawls out of her hair and walks down, and she doesn't even notice it. Okay? So she was one of the drug users, but didn't even notice that. Another unit, do you remember the movie Indiana Jones, when he goes and he looks down in the temple and the other guy says, why is the floor moving? And they drop the thing down there and they see it's all snakes down there. We went into one unit, we stopped at the door and looked in there and said, why is the carpet moving? And so we pulled the carpet back, all cockroaches, solid cockroaches moving. So enough that it made the carpet move. Gross, disgusting, horrible. We ended up hiring a manager. Now this manager was an absolute, I'm going to use the term Fruit Loop. She had a holistic way of getting rid of cockroaches. I forget what it was. It was very interesting. She also had rules like no smoking outside because she didn't want to cause any more pollution. But she was there and she was absolutely crazy, but she lived there and, got a control of everything, and she did a good job at leasing it up and taking care of it. And we put up access gates and doing all that, but there was still crime and troubles, etc. But after a while, Monty gave up on it, said, I'm spending too much time here. It's not making me any money. So he bailed. So it was me that had the property by myself. It was my cash that got put into it anyway. So that was a fun story regarding my first commercial property that I bought, owned, and managed myself. Everything else was at that time, was cutting my teeth through the foundation and my dad's management company. I went on to buy a bunch of small commercial properties, office buildings, apartments, retail centers. I developed land. I flipped land. And I've got 100 stories on those. I'll tell you one of those stories that's a big attention getter. I had put under contract 3 industrial buildings in Ferris, Texas. Ferris, Texas is south of Dallas. It's also known for that's where the dump is. But these 3 properties, I put them under contract. And I found a buyer to buy one of those buildings so that I could flip that one out and do a double closing, which means I didn't spend any money. I made money on that. And I used that as the down payment for the other 2. Brilliant, nothing down deal. So that ended up working out great. I then leased the space out, making cash flow, and then I get a call one day that said, hey, your building's on the news. Wait a minute, really? So I turned on the TV, and sure enough, there's my building, smoke pouring out of the roof, and a caption that I see that says, cyanide gas leaking from the building. Well, that will definitely make your butt pucker. So I had no idea. I wasn't normally on any crisis. I run down to the properties, but they said, cyanide gas leaking from building, city being evacuated. They basically told everybody in the city, run for your lives. People in supermarkets, grocery stores, gas stations, convenience stores, etc., all ran from the building. To make a long story short, it was not cyanide gas. A new employee at the company that was there put chemicals from one 55-gallon drum into another one that wasn't properly cleaned. It caused a flash fire, an explosion that went up through the ceiling, burned a hole in the ceiling. He killed that guy, gave another guy burns, and the volunteer fire department was called the volunteer fire department, comes in there with water and sprays it on the chemical fire. You don't spray water on a chemical fire, just like you don't spray water on a grease fire. All that did was cause a noxious gas, and it was making people feel bad, so they thought it was cyanide gas. So that was an interesting challenge to deal with. Now, there's a whole lot more details that I can go into on that, on how we protected ourselves, how our legal entity protected ourselves, and the outcome of all of that. But that's all in our book, Full Disclosure. So that'll be coming out late this year. So hopefully you can get that too. What made me want to own my own company? Well, I already talked about it. That was one of the first rules my dad always gave me. Own your own business. You have to own your own business to control your own destiny. Part of that, expounding on that a bit, is he said, if you own a small business, you own a job. If you own a big business, you have an investment. And Rich Dad, Poor Dad does the same thing with EBSI, same type of thing. And it took a very long time to get to the point where we have the team so that I became an investor in our business rather than an owner-operator. But you need to know how to do all of the positions all the way through your entire business. Like I talked about in my career on how I cut my teeth and learned, I had to go through all the positions to do that also. If you don't know how to do that position, how can you lead somebody else in that position? So you need to learn all of those things so that you can own and operate your own business. But then the goal is to actually get a big business. Self-employed is great, but you're the last person to get paid and you work the most hours. And you do that so that you can get to a point to have good financial freedom and to have and build something of value and importance. How did I come about formulating a team? This is actually a real simple diagram. I think it might still be drawn on my whiteboard in my office. But I look at this as a hub. Actually, you probably take personality tests like this. You've seen that, where there's you as a hub, and then there's different parts of you that all have to be in balance. You know, you've got to have a good career. Well, as your career grows, that line out from that hub gets bigger. Well, you've got to have family. As that grows, that line goes out. Now, you also have to have good health. Well, if you're neglecting that, then that's a shorter line. So if you take all those lines out from the center point, it comes up with hopefully a circle where all of that is in balance. A circle where all that is in balance. It's the same thing in your business then. I looked at mine saying, I'm here, but there are all these facets of the business that I need help with. Legal, accounting, human resources, property management, property supervisors, construction, insurance, lending, all of those aspects. When you own your own business, you're doing all of those by yourself. In doing that, your wheel is pretty small. You're not going to go very far. But the more you create those lines, those spokes off that hub, the bigger you make that, the faster your overall team can go. So I hired, one of my first hires was a guy named Brian Johnson. He's our in-house attorney now. A great quick story on Brian Johnson. How I found him. I just wanted an executive assistant. I went on one of the websites to go ahead and post an offering for a job that I had. And I put on there what I wanted. And then it said, well, what skills do you want? And it had little check mark boxes. I said, well, with what I'm doing, having some legal knowledge would be good. Having some accounting knowledge would be good. Having human resources would be good. Having this, all these different things. I didn't realize that what that did is that spread it out and it put it on all of those specific boards. So my executive assistant thing went on a board for CPAs. It went on one for lawyers. It went on one for human resource. It went on for all of these things. And I got, I think, 200 resumes sent in. And I was going through those and, why do you have a college degree? Because it's the first thing people will look at and say, oh, they don't have a college degree. Real easy to throw that resume away. Well, on mine, I had 3 CPAs and 3 lawyers that were on that list. So I called all 6 of those. And I thought, well, I'll start there. It'd be great to have those on my team. One of those resumes was Brian Johnson. I called him, talked to him. He said, yeah, I'd like to interview for the position. I said, okay, great. And he lived in Wisconsin. He flew down and interviewed. Something I learned in that interview was he graduated with a law degree. He was currently a litigator, and being the nicest guy in the world, a litigator was a tough road to hoe there. It was a tough thing for him to be because he's such a good guy. And interviewed with him and found out that his girlfriend had moved to Austin, and so he was trying to do something to get closer to his girlfriend. So I made him an offer. I said, look, I can't afford you. You don't have any real estate experience. This probably isn't a great fit, mainly because I can't afford you. And so I made him a lowball offer, a ridiculous, stupid lowball offer. Which, a quick sidebar on that, the times that I did not care if I was hiring somebody are the times that I actually hired somebody. If I was trying to sell them on a position, I never once got to hire anybody. But I made him a lowball offer, said, here's what I'm willing to offer. And I said, you're gonna have to work 16-hour days. You got catch up to do. And I was thinking, you're a lawyer, you're used to doing that anyway. And I can't afford you anyway, so I'll give you an excuse. You don't wanna work 16-hour days, that's fine. Plus, I'm gonna give you a stack of books you're gonna have to read to understand real estate. And I'm gonna pay you this amount, you're gonna have to move down here. Thinking I'd never hear from him again. A couple days later, he calls me and said, I'd like to take the job. I am shocked. I'm like, what? How is that possible? You're actually going to take that job? And he wanted to do that. Well, he moved down and he did exactly that. He rented an apartment. I have a vision in my head that he had a mattress on a floor in the apartment and he had a chair. And that's it. That he was reading, working on his laptop, and working 24 hours a day. He would be in at 7 o'clock in the morning, Monday morning, come in 7 o'clock every single morning. He'd stay till about 8 o'clock at night, where he'd go home and probably read, get something to eat and read, and then be back up at 7. However, Friday afternoons at about 3 o'clock, he'd knock off, and he would drive down to Austin and spend the weekend with his girlfriend, which was a great position to be in. I got a win-win situation. After a little over a year, and I ran him through the ringers quite a bit. I even had him go out. I had a drainage problem on a property and we had to move a lot of dirt. So I don't know if it was me being narcissistic. Actually, that's the wrong word. I don't know if that was me being just mean, but he's used to Wisconsin, likes cold weather, and had him go out there, hire a crew of people and move dirt to correct drainage. And this is in the middle of summer in Texas. But he got out there and he did the job. He did it great, didn't argue, complain, anything else, and he got out there and got the job done. But I wanted him to understand what goes on site, get a feel for that whole thing as part of his overall education. About a year later, a little over a year, he said, hey, my girlfriend and I, we're gonna move to Colorado. My heart sunk. I thought, he has been doing such a great job. He's handled everything. He's been doing wonderful. What am I going to do without him? And I asked him that. I said, so what are your plans? He said, well, I'd still like to work for you. I can do it remotely. And I'm just right this second thinking about it. The first time I've ever thought about it, maybe, just maybe, he wanted to get out and work from home so he didn't have to dig any more ditches. I don't know if that's true or not. I just right this second, for the first time ever, thought about that. But we came up with a good compensation package for him, and he moved to Colorado and has been working remotely ever since. Like I said, I envision him, I know this is not true, that's my own vision, sitting in a lounge chair in a robe with his laptop and working 24 hours. I know that's not true, it's just my own vision because he's working. I can call him at 2 o'clock in the morning and he'll pick up and have whatever I need right then. And currently he handles everything with acquisitions and dispositions, all legal, all asset management, communication with the partners, making sure everything's done, dotting all the I's, crossing all the T's, and he's great. So that was just one spoke. He was the first person I hired. And my advice to people is hire what you're weakest at first and hire somebody that's best at that. My next hire was a guy named Jeremy Wolcott. I met him at an event with a mentoring group that teaches you how to invest in apartments. And he was outgoing, positive, absolutely great guy. And he wanted to work with me. And I get that all the time, but everybody's always full of crap on actually doing anything. So we went out to a property that I was going to tour called Hazelwood. Drove out there, looked at the property, did a back of the napkin analysis while we were there, because this was if you want the deal, you got to move quick. And so he's there, I'm there, another broker is there. We do the back of the napkin calculation. I said, okay, I'm going to buy this. It's $100,000 non-refundable earnest money. And I said, I'll put up half, you put up half. And to my surprise, didn't call his wife, didn't call anybody. He said, yes, I'm in. I'll put up $50,000 non-refundable. And I thought, this guy is committed. I like that. I like somebody that's going to commit and do it and put his money where his mouth is. So that started a great relationship. And because of his personality, he is great with people. He has a finance degree. He worked for Pizza Hut in the franchise division, dealing with people that were buying franchises and their financials and how to get the whole thing done. So he understood what I was looking for in an investor, and he could communicate all that. So he was the next guy that I brought in. Now, I didn't have to pay him anything. He was working for a piece of the ownership. And that's what he did, is he worked on those deals, helped raise money. He was part of the sponsorship team, and he raised money for those deals. And he did a great job and brought in a whole lot of investors, which, by the way, he's now pretty much retired in Mexico. We made enough money for him that he could quit doing that. And I think he's probably about 36 years old and retired in Mexico from his real estate investments that he did through us. My dad gave me a lot of rules, which were very important and all very integral to my success. Which is really hard for me to say anyway, my success. First thing, it is not me. It is a team effort. We have got a great team behind us. The biggest thing that I would say got me to where I am is being curious, being creative, being innovative, always looking for solutions, always learning, and then luck is when preparation meets opportunity. So was I lucky? Yes. But was I prepared when I saw an opportunity? Yes, that too. But part of the success that actually took me off on mine, doing all my own deals, I was very slow growing. When I really launched is when I brought in a team. I have got a great team around me, and they're the ones that actually make me look good. I'm the one that gets to come in front of a camera and tell my story, and this is not about me. This is about the team that does this. Brian Johnson, absolutely brilliant, our in-house general counsel and asset manager. Brian Hawley, who runs the property management company, absolutely brilliant, works his butt off. Julian Alexander, who's not only doing investor relations, communicating with all of our partners, but he also does acquisitions. He's our in-house broker as well. Mo, who's filming this right now, he's doing great at marketing and getting these videos and forcing me to be on camera and telling my story. Just everybody around us has been great. Plus the relationships in the whole industry between all the brokers, the lenders, the management companies, everybody involved. It's a team effort. Real estate is not about the real estate. It's a people business. It's dealing with people. Right now, the most important people in my company are our investor partners. These are people that have invested millions and millions and millions of dollars with us. And our number one rule is always protect the investor. That's what everybody in the organization knows. We are here to protect the investor. So you get down to, what is the most important piece of business advice I have? I can't narrow it down. To steal a quote, Nike said it best, just do it. That's the number one thing. You can pencil till your pencil breaks. You can analyze the heck out of things, but until you get out there and do it, you're not making any progress. Another thing people say is the most important words in real estate are location, location, location. I disagree. It's tie it up. The location is relative to the price. But if you don't have control of whatever that asset is, somebody else is going to go out and get it. You're going to lose out on an opportunity. So you have to keep your eyes out for opportunity. You got to be prepared for those. You got to keep looking. You got to make things happen. You need to just do it. All the other rules are how to get you into a position of how to do it. So they're all extremely important, but the biggest thing is people. It's all about the people. Your partners, your team around you, who you surround yourself with. There's a saying a lot of people say is look at your the 5 people closest to you, average out their net income, and that's where yours is going to be. So what is that other saying? It's hard to fly with eagles when you're hanging around with turkeys. I'm not saying, get rid of your friends or anything like that, but make sure that you are bringing value and creating that opportunity for all of the people around you. Protect the people around you. Do what you say you're going to do. Tell them what you're going to do and then do what you say you're going to do. I could probably talk about all the history for hours upon hours and hundreds of very, very interesting stories that you can learn from. Bottom line is from the time I was born until I was 21 was education, learning things, mentorship by my father, and just growing up. From 2001 to 2008, that's when my career was established by managing and operating these 5,500 units, cutting my teeth there, getting mentorship from the foundation, and learning everything about real estate from 2001 to 2008. The 2001 to 2008, on deals that I was doing for myself, I probably have $1 million education in mistakes I've made. One of my dad's other rules was, if you don't ever want to make a mistake, don't do anything. So, which means, sit on your hand and don't do anything. But bottom line, get out there and do things. It's okay if you make mistakes. Even now, that's part of my philosophy. I'd rather have somebody on my team make a mistake after trying to be diligent at making a decision and making a decision. I'd rather have them make a mistake than make no decision at all. It's very important to me to empower the staff and the team so that they know what they're doing, and it's okay. It's not, most of the things that happen because of our checks and balances is not detrimental and not going to hurt any of our investors. 2001 to 2008, probably have $1 million in mistakes. And if you have a mistake and you don't learn from it, it is just that, a mistake. In my mind, if it's $1 million and you learned from it, then that's part of your educational expense. So I've got $1 million education in mistakes that I made with my own money. 2008 to present, I learned about real estate syndication, and utilizing all of my past experience, all my past mistakes, all the tools I've got in my toolbox from all the real estate deals that I've done, put me in a position that I could do real estate syndication. Syndication means I'm using other people's money to go ahead and invest with me in deals that I'm doing. So our main philosophy is investors first. We do whatever we can to protect the investors, which means very stringent underwriting on our deals, which we've missed out on a lot of deals because I won't go that far. I want to make sure that we're protecting the clients. Now, we did have one deal out of about 70 deals that lost money. And I'll tell all about that also because people want to learn from that. But I am an open book. That's why I'm writing the book, Full Disclosure, to go ahead and tell everybody about that. Full disclosure on how I did all the transactions, where I made money, where I lost money, how I did the deal, how it came about, etc. And there's a whole lot more detail that I can't go in here. But 2008 until present, it's all real estate syndication. Investing your money with a team that has a lot of experience, myself as the captain of the ship, so to say, but with a great crew, a great team that knows what they're doing with the same premise, investors first. Look at what we can do to protect them and their money and their hard-earned equity that they've built up. It's hard to come up with $100,000. It takes a lot of work and a lot of effort. You don't want to lose it on some investment. So I'm very particular about what we buy for our partners. We specialize in apartments. That's 99% of the deal we do. And we've got everything geared toward that. Our own in-house management with our own team that does the property management. We've got our own investor relations team that constantly communicate. We're all about full disclosure, which is why the name of the book, and also transparency. So we give all the information. When we do distributions, we do them monthly, and we also send out a complete package. You can do an audit from the accounting package that we send out each month. And because of all this, and we've had great history, if I go back 30 years, overall history is about 18% average annual return. Since 2008, including losing on the one that lost money, we're over a 30% per year average annual return. Some at 60, 70% per year average returns because we're so conservative in our underwriting. This has garnered a lot of attention. We get a lot of new investors that are just referrals. Hey, I invested with Darwin. Go see what he's about, what he's doing. Then we have an investor relations team that people can meet with. We've got monthly meetings that are in person here at our office, but we also broadcast that for the people that can't make it or are all over the country, and it's recorded so you can watch it later. So we do all of that for the benefit of the investor. So we're here for win-win-win scenarios. A win for the resident, a win for the communities, and a win for you as investors. So we do not take that for granted. We thank you so much for trusting us with your hard-earned capital. And we just want to keep on making money for people. And this is also now taking us to the next level where we've got a lot of large investors that are looking at investing large dollars because of this education, because of this track record, because of this history. And with the team that we have in place, the checks and balances, the transparency that we have is a very attractive thing for people to invest in. And we would love to have you involved. Go to www.darwingerman, DARWINGERMAN.com, and you can register there, and you can go and get all this information. We've got about 50 videos up on YouTube you can watch. We've got all the information. Like I said, we're an open book. Our property management company is a not-for-profit management company. We do that for the benefit of the properties. Again, it goes back to rule one, investors first. So we're not making money on our management. We're doing that so that we can protect your investment even better. Like I said, I've got 1,000 things I could say, and really none of them matter. Because the bottom line is we want to be here for you. We want to help you make money. We want to make sure to protect that investment and protect you. So make sure you get involved. Make sure that you know what you're investing in, because there's a lot of people out there that will just take and invest your money, but they're people that have not been through market down cycles and having the experience that we have. So again, we're honored by your investment. We don't take it for granted. We're there to protect you. So thank you so much. And again, my name is Darwin German. Feel free to reach out to us anytime, and thank you so much.